Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Theo, and I love to talk about horror movies. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the role of Jenny Penn. Now, I first heard about this movie from an ad on Google that said that Stephen King has seen high praise in an upcoming horror movie on Shudder. Likely anything that has Stephen King name attached to it, I'm like wanting to be interested in because I'm a big Stephen King fan. So I put some faith into it and said, you know, I'm going to watch this movie. Typically, I watch some of the Shudder movies that are exclusively made on Shudder, and I like a decent amount of them. This one, I think this one got me. I think it got me by surprise. And not in a good way either. I would say this one is a mediocre horror movie at best. I wouldn't even necessarily pinpoint it as a horror movie, maybe more psychological thriller than anything else. Psychological horror, not necessarily an overall scary movie. And that'll probably arise a couple questions, which, you know, who believes in which horror and what's going to be horror to somebody else isn't necessarily horror to me. That's fine. That's the point of an opinion. That's the point of what these videos are for. It's to show my opinion. Yours might be different, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I don't think this should be categorized as a horror movie. I would categorize it as a psychological movie that is pretty predictable, that kind of comes off-putting and doesn't necessarily have the best ending either. It's really like, it just falls flat for me, you know? It really falls flat. I don't know how else to say it. And with the high praise from Stephen King, I feel like anymore, I don't want to seem skeptic to one of my biggest horror influences for what got me into the genre itself. But with a lot of things nowadays that say, Stephen King has shown praise, or Stephen King says this is the scariest movie he's ever seen, or Stephen King says this psychological thriller is one of the scariest things he's seen in years. A lot of those movies anymore, they don't really hit for me the way that they did for whenever I was in my younger age, getting into horror. Whenever I would see that back in the day and it was Stephen King praises this movie, I would think it's okay. And I don't know if it's an age thing for me or what, but the older I get, the more I see that, the more I'm like, is it really though? And not to discredit Stephen King, I still love it. Still love everything he's done, all of his books and all the movies that have been adapted, most of them anyway, shows, all that, the full 9 yards. I think is incredible inspiration to horror. Some of the stuff that he influences nowadays, I don't really see eye to eye with. So the role of Jenny Penn, what is it and what it's about? So this is a psychological horror-esque movie about a judge that is sentencing a criminal to his sentencing. Basically has a stroke while he is giving that sentence and ends up in a rehabilitation center, retirement center, to help with physical therapy to recover from the stroke. During the judge's stay in the rehabilitation center, he comes across somebody who is named Dave Crearley. And Dave is a psychopath that has lived in this retirement center almost his whole life, that abuses and harms every elderly person or rehabilitated needed person that comes through in some way, shape, or form. And he does this by using psychological manipulation and using the illnesses that these people have against them. And he also uses a dementia doll, a little plastic doll on his hand, that he calls Jenny Penn, in order to inflict psychological harm to people that are living in this rehabilitation center. In this movie, the acting is phenomenal. So the two main characters in this movie are obviously the judge, whose name is Stefan. He is played by Jeffrey Rush, who played Barbossa in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and Dave Crearley, who is the psychopath with the hand puppet, and he's played by John Lithgow. Also, incredible actor from Third Rock from the Sun, and played Laura Farquaad in Shrek. Really, really good. Phenomenal acting. I will never say it's not in this movie. It really from the two stars of this movie and their age also, it shows that like they still got it. Like they really do. They put on one hell of a performance throughout this entire film. So as Stefan realizes that Dave has been in this rehabilitation center most of his life and he's causing harm to all these people, he comes up with a way with his roommate to try to kill Dave and try to get him away from these people and causing harm to them. Which happens over and over and over again throughout the movie with a little backsplash of story here and a little backsplash of story there. That doesn't really tie much of the plot together. It just kind of shows that Dave was left here by his parents in this rehabilitation center and has gone completely nuts with this hand puppet and causing harm, but he doesn't actually have like a foreseeable illness. Really, he's just a psycho that's causing harm to people inside of this rehabilitation center for the majority of his life. And with that cycle happening over and over and over again throughout the movie, it starts to become predictable about what's going to happen. So time and time again, there are instances where Stefan and his roommate are trying to kill Dave and they try to plot a way to do so, and then Dave overcomes it, and then he does the same to them in return by torturing them or trying to kill them, and goes back and forth most of the movie. There's even a scene where Stefan goes in and empties all of Dave's inhalers because he has asthma and starts to cause him to have an asthma attack, and everyone thinks like he's dead. And then, no, he's not. He comes back in the next scene and causes a bunch of mayhem. And again, just back and forth. And it starts to look like, okay, so in the end, obviously, either one of these two are going to die. And spoilers, if you want to stop the video now, Dave dies. And he dies by suffocation. And they trap him in a room after he goes in to try and torment them once. They push his head down into a pillow. They both jump on top of him. He has an asthma attack. He dies. They take the hand puppet. They burn it. That's this movie. That's it. That's what happens in this movie. That's the end. They burn the hand puppet. Song comes on. Credits come on. That's the movie. Now, for me, I will tell you my positives for this movie. I have a couple. The acting, for sure, from Geoffrey Rush and John Lithgow, just phenomenal. These two, I've known of their acting in a lot of ways throughout my life experiences. Obviously, growing up, I was a big fan of Shrek and knew Lord Farquaad, and I watched Third Rock from the Sun, Harry and the Hendersons. John Lithgow was a part of that. I love the Pirates of the Caribbean movies to a point. Barbossa was awesome in those movies. So I know of their acting and know what they were able to do in their prime, and these guys still got it. They put on a hell of a performance, and they're both, older in their years, older in age, and it definitely shows that they haven't lost a beat. The plot itself, it's okay. I would rate it as like a 3, but I would also rate it as a very predictable, like 2.5, 3. I wouldn't put it as like this twist and turn threw me off and I didn't know what was going to happen in the end. And, I would say it is okay. Necessarily a positive or a negative, more or less a positive on my behalf, because I like a good plot in a movie, but I don't like one that is not like hella predictable. Now with that, let's move on to some of my negatives. My negatives for this movie kind of coexist with the plot itself and being predictable. If we carry over from, me talking about not liking a predictable plot, I like that. I don't like that for any movie. I like a little bit of like, I can tell kind of what's going to happen, but I would love, especially in a horror or psychological or a mystery thriller or some type of movie like that, I don't want to know exactly what's going on until like those last few minutes of the movie. I don't like being able to piece everything together. Like, it's so predictable. Like, why did I even watch this movie in the first place? So that's also a negative for me in this. It's a big one, honestly. My overall rating, I'm giving it a 2.5. I'm sorry, Stephen King, I don't necessarily agree with you whenever you're calling this the greatest horror movie you've seen in years, or greatest psychological movie you've seen in years. To me, a greatest psychological movie you've seen in years would be like Suspiria. That one, the remake even, was incredible. So that is the level I would put it at if you want to talk about psychological greatest you've seen in years. Not a couple elderly people just trying to kill each other most of the movie with a little bit of psychopathic tendencies thrown in. But with that, like I said, the acting in this from the two main characters, phenomenal. Legends on their own right. Never discredit them. They do a phenomenal job, but it didn't hit for me like it's hitting for a lot of people. And then the cinematography and the design and effects, they were very subpar. The cinematography is shot like you would expect a psychological horror movie to be shot nowadays. There's like glowing red scenes and glowing green scenes and strobe effects, and they all seem practical for the most part. Design and effects, there's not much that goes into like the effects and the costumes or practical effects either. It's like an elderly community retirement home kind of setting, so most of the people are in like robes and naked sometimes, and outside of that, the only other design plot there really is the nurses and their nurse attire and their scrubs and the hand puppet. That's about it. So that's a big negative for me. I think there could have been more done to capture more of a sense of what was happening and the psychological, psychopathic tendencies of Dave during this movie. That'll do it for this one for me, guys. I appreciate everything you do in supporting the channel. The channel just hit 30,000 views, which I greatly appreciate. Starting this out about 6 months ago, I didn't necessarily know where it was going to go. I'm not doing this for like fame, fortune. I'm doing this for fun. But I appreciate everything you guys do for the support. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Check under your beds, and stay safe out there, everybody.